Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. I'm your host, Greg Watts, and please welcome our guest today, Emma-Louise Maw, Head of Global Partnerships at Thursday. Emma, hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Greg. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you for joining us. And please tell our listeners where you're calling us from, or joining us from, I should say.
Yes, I'm joining you from the northeast of England today. Yes,
So jealous.
Newcastle.
We're in dirty, grimy London, which we do love, but you have got this beautiful fresh air up there. Not jealous in the slightest.
Well, the air is fresher, I will say that, but I do spend half my time in London, so I do share your air as well, Greg.
You have the best of both worlds. You really, really, really do. Well, look, kicking off with it, starting with an overview, an introduction to yourself, if we may. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are, your background, your current position, and a little bit more about Thursday?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm Emma, as you said. I'm the head of global partnerships at Thursday, which is the dating brand that's reinventing how people connect and make connections happen. So we started off as being live one day a week in an app, and then we rejigged that model to turn off the app, to turn off the swipes, and now we only do everything in real life, which I think is
Wow.
really bold and a refreshing take in the space that's really quite often, I mean, it feels a little bit stale. And I think that's what I really love about Thursday. So my journey, I guess, into this world of partnerships hasn't been really a straight line, I would say. I actually trained in acting.
Ah,
Yeah.
I didn't know
um,
that. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
which turned out to be, I guess, a really brilliant foundation
Yeah.
for everything I do.
Mm.
So learning how to communicate clearly and
Oh,
understand different, I guess, perspectives, and connecting with people emotionally as well. And then after that, I moved into the world of magazines and events where I was really, I guess, properly introduced to what I would call like the magic of brand storytelling and live experiences as well, which was really, really fun. I did the Men of the Year awards with
I
GQ
didn't know that.
magazine. Yeah,
Wow.
which was really, really fun to do.
Wow.
And then I spent a few good years, like a bulk of my career agency side,
Mm.
where I would say I really learned the how. So like how to build strategy, um, how to activate creatively, like campaigns and also manage relationships from pitch to execution as well. And I think now, like today, modern day at Thursday, I now get to bring all of those different facets of like together. So I work with just honestly some dream brands that I've always wanted to work with. And I guess within the team, to create partnerships that are really, I think, really culturally relevant and human led and definitely never boring, Greg, is what I would say.
Uh, After
Yeah.
you, I'm so sorry. Please go ahead.
No, no, it's okay. So I think, yeah, whether I think we do anything from whether it's like a bit of a spicy sampling moment at a party in like New York at a skyscraper,
That's
or we
cool.
do like full blown ski trip takeovers in the Alps, which to like a Bali beach trip. I think the aim with partnerships at Thursday is to always make it a little bit memorable, which is why I like it so much.
I've got a question for you. And so how will it always be? I think I know the answer to this, but do you foresee it always being on a Thursday?
Well, no, it's actually the brand has kind of expanded its offering really for it to be. We do like Sunday dinners as well. We do something
Okay.
called Thursday dinners where we get a selected cohort of people up to 25 people. It can be less sometimes around a table, where it's a bit more intimate. Usually it's for the 30 plus audience as well, who maybe want to connect in a different way than at a bar or running or
Mm.
boxing or whatever we offer. Um, Yeah, so I think no, to your answer, it's not always just on a Thursday. Our main thing is on a Thursday, but we do other events on Sundays, Saturdays, Mondays as well.
I remember when you first launched quite a few years ago now, and I remember seeing I was on LinkedIn, I think, and I was coming into work, and I remember seeing this kind of massive social media post on LinkedIn would have been obviously with one of the founders talking about how it launched. And I just thought, oh my God, this is incredible, and it was just so refreshing, and it kind of builds the excitement more as well, doesn't it? That it's not constantly on. As in, that
Yeah.
you have to wait a little bit to participate in one of the events and one of the experiences, which I think makes it more exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely got that like sort of fandom.
Yes,
Um,
fandom. That's the word.
yeah, I went to a wonderful talk with Milk Drop,
Oh yeah.
who's an agency, and they had Spotify there and Fable and Main and a few different other speakers. And we were all chatting together afterwards about like this idea of fandom, and all of them were like, Thursday is definitely
Yeah.
connected to this fandom aspect where people just really want to jump on this new thing that's happened within the dating scene, which ironically isn't really new. We've just give people a different way to access in real life or meeting in real life.
Well, I kind of think of it. You've connected lots of dots, as it were.
Yeah.
You know, people looking to date, they want to have a good experience. They want to have a memorable time. They don't necessarily want just two people. They want it to be maybe not. You know, they want more people there to take away some of perhaps of the anxiety, or perhaps that could be there for some people. You got it all right. You've just literally, I think of it. You just connected all the dots, and you keep all the dots electrified as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think the gentlemen would, yeah, say their thanks to that as well. I think they were just we've got two really creative and switched on founders
Yes.
who just, started with honeypot dating, which was what
Yep.
originally Thursday was called. And
I
then it
think
went
that.
into, yeah, and then it went into the app, which was, swiping, but only on a Thursday. And
Um,
now with live events still happening on a Thursday, but you were able to swipe on a Thursday as well. And then all of your connections deleted. And then it was like back to the next Thursday to meet someone. So you had to be really quick and reactive. Um, and then that's where the idea sprung of like, actually, we get a lot more like traction from these live events that we're putting on. That's where the real connection is made, because connection is in real life at the end of
yeah.
the day, and the conduit is really just like swiping and texting. So yeah, we just went straight to the end result, hopefully.
And you've evolved the brand. I mean, we'll talk more about this as we go through the podcast, but you've really evolved the proposition incredibly well. But you started off as you are continuing now, which is creating excitement out of something that people want to do, which is date.
Yeah.
And you make it and you because I think about, was it 5 6 years ago that it launched, 5 6 7 years ago roughly,
Yes.
I think they were starting to feel, I mean, we're both married obviously, but I think they were starting to feel a bit of an antipathy towards dating apps. And I know that my single friends at the time were thinking, ugh, you didn't
Yeah.
really hear anyone talk well about dating apps. But when you hear people talk about Thursday, it's like, oh my God, this is really exciting. So you completely came at the time where people were just getting a bit jaded, bored, indifferent, and you just excited, you've really made it exciting.
Yeah, I think a
Fun.
lot of it, like what you said, Greg, is about timing as well.
Mm.
Um, and like being reactive to culturally relevant things that are happening and going on, and having the right people that are working around you. I think the founders have really chose a really brilliant team.
Yeah.
I do say so myself, but I think
Yeah,
they've
they have.
chosen some great team members who are really culturally switched on around the world. Um, that have impacted on their journey and the decisions that they've made, and they're massive listeners as well. So they really do, like, we do a roundup meeting every week where everyone, chats about potentially something that's going on within the business, or maybe something we should change, or something creative. And I think their appetite for moving forward consistently is what makes it successful, I would say.
I think you've joined a brilliant company. Um,
Yeah.
well, we'll come back to this, but I really want to ask, because I know that our listeners will be keen to hear, and you've touched on it a little bit. Have you seen Thursday's approach change since you've been there when it comes to creating partnerships? And you did touch on this a little bit.
Yeah, I guess when I joined partnerships, So for Insight, I've been
Mm.
with Thursday for around about 10 months now as my role. But I was working with them for a year and a half before that
I didn't know that.
as
Okay.
agency side.
Okay.
So I think I've been in and involved in their journey for, I would say, around about 2 years.
Mm.
Um, so I know them quite well before I even joined, working with them closely. And when I joined, I think partnerships were still really, really quite reactive. And what I mean by that is Thursday were gaining a lot of attention, as we've just previously discussed, as a bit of a disruptor in the dating space. So brands were naturally really curious and, coming to us with these really like fun ideas, and we were hitting back with some fun ideas as well. And we just lean into the ones that, felt like a really good fit. And a lot of the early collabs were super fun, but they weren't necessarily built on a long-term strategy. And I think then, um, yeah, I think well, since then we've evolved massively. So we now approach partnerships in a much more intentional way, like thinking long term, like building those creative narratives that actually ladder up to something that's a bit more linked to our brand purpose as a whole, um, and making sure that we like really co-create with partners who are really getting our audience and really getting
Yeah.
our perspective. So we're not just looking like for, logo swaps or
No.
products. We want to build experience that are really mutually beneficial. And I think most importantly, culturally impactful, like what I was saying before about the research we do and how we hire across the world. And I think that's what makes it genuinely exciting for our community as well, which is what this is all about, is our community who buy into our events. And therefore, I think the focus within our partnerships is more about depth over breadth. Whereas I think previously we were just so excited that we were partnering with these amazing brands, that we were just taking on partnerships left, right, and centre. Whereas I think now we're doing fewer things, but doing them hopefully really well, which is
But
what
you
I would say.
But I
Yeah.
think it could be very, very. Certainly in the early days, and you've been you've been on the journey now for quite some time. But in the early days, I think it could be quite enticing when a larger brand or a global brand says, "Oh, hey, do you want to do this with us?" And I think
Yeah.
most people would say yes. So,
Yeah.
but then as you yourselves become much more established and very sought after, might I add, then I think it's normal to then flip into becoming, as you say, more intentional, thinking actually, we would, of course, we'd like to partner with you, but maybe let's have a conversation about how it could be longer term rather than just a one or two events.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's, when partnering, I think it's super important to always start with the why,
Why?
like why this partner, why now? Like,
Both parties.
yeah, exactly, both parties. And just like what's the story? What are you going to tell? Like it has to be intentional,
Mhm.
instead of it being just feeling like a little bit like, oh well, they partnered with this person, but I can't really see how that's worked or what message they're trying to send. It kind of needs to be quite obvious to people in the audience as well.
Well, I think you're leading a masterclass when it comes to creating partnerships. I really do, for a number of
Oh,
reasons. Well, which actually brings us quite nicely onto our next question, which is looking at partnerships, because they are, after all, the lifeblood of businesses. And you've worked agency side, you started your career, or you were trained as an actor. What's your definition of a business partnership, and how do you go about creating them? Because you talked about how quite a few brands come to you. You'll obviously have brands that you'll want to go to as well. Where do you start? How do you go about creating them?
yeah, it's a really good question. I think, yeah, to me, a true partnership is when two brands come together with an aligned vision or values, as we were discussing before. I think a shared audience, that can be one of a few things: a shared audience, a common goal, a brand ethos, and they bring each other something to the table that elevates the other. So it doesn't come across as being like transactional, or flippant. And it's not about, as I said before, slapping two logos on something and hoping for the best and fingers crossed. There's more of a bigger process to it that that whole what's the story, the why, that we can tell together, so that I get, yeah, sorry, the moving back, that what's
Mm.
the story, and then how can we tell this together that we couldn't tell by ourselves, so we couldn't
That's it.
tell this alone.
That's a
Um,
definition.
yeah, and once we've found that core idea that joins us together, it's about then a multitude of things like building trust, communicating efficiently, bringing like some creative flair to the process. I think a good partnership should really make both sides feel like they're part of something that's super exciting and not like difficult and bit chewy. Something that really pushes the boundaries and I think
Mm.
reaches a new audience because the new audience is both of your audiences joining together. And I
Mm.
think that's what drives the real results instead of just being like, oh, if it's a media campaign, let's track the metrics. Yes, you're always going to have to do that. And there's always going to be a results driven aspect to it. But I think if you think about what has the audience said, what was their emotional reaction to seeing that billboard or being at that event, that's the good stuff.
Yeah, I've never thought of actually. We've done hundreds of podcasts, and partnerships is our kind of our what we do. But I've never really heard them describe quite like that before in all my time, which is actually creating something bigger together. Is
Yeah,
effectively what you're kind of saying is what's so yes, we've got our two stories, but what's that story, that bigger story we can create together, which is going to amplify both of us and help us reach new heights together. That's a very powerful thought.
yeah. So I think I don't know whether I said it clearly before, but I think it's
It-
what's the story we can tell together that we couldn't tell alone. And I
yeah.
think that's the strongest, that's the driver when I look for good partners with whoever that might be. I think it's if we can come together to tell a story that is different with both of our audiences, then that's what's exciting. That's what, not that about it's about winning awards, but that's what really gets people excited by partnerships.
Well, that's what I suppose thinking about it. Obviously, won't go too much into the psychology 'cause it's way too early on a Tuesday morning. At least for me, anyway. But actually, I guess it's like any relationship in life that actually the two
Yeah,
of you, or I guess in modern day, maybe more than two, but certainly two of you coming together is more than just the one of you, right? And so,
yeah.
and together you make an incredible thing, story, team, call it what you will. So why shouldn't the same be of a business partnership? It makes absolute sense.
Exactly. And as you said, like in relationships, much like business partnerships, there's sticky areas and there's things
Yep.
that you need to iron out. And I think the difference between a business partnership is you have less time to do that.
Yes.
You have to get to that. You have to be really honest. You have to be really bold. You have to be upfront. You have to really know who your brand is and what their message is. And then you have to come together and be honest about whether that's going to work. You have
Yeah.
to put the money aside and whatever funding or sponsorship is, that really doesn't matter when it comes to doing something that's really great work. I think it's about whether there's a shared vision, definitely.
And you have to trust each other.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one of the most important things is that I trust you that this is what your brand says it's going to do and what it is, and this is your audience, and we trust them to have their message and audience as well.
Well, you started off as a trained actor. So, for all of the budding partnerships people listening, what advice would you give to your younger self starting out? Perhaps the do's and the don'ts of partnership creation and development. And I think starting in acting, training in acting is a brilliant foundation. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's like, I guess, a bit of a layered question, but
Mm.
um I'd probably tell my younger self to not be afraid to ask questions and take up space. I
Yeah.
think in the start of my career, I was maybe a little bit more on the back foot about taking up space in terms of creative ideation or what my opinions were. An opinion is never wrong. I think in a room, a shared opinion's like never wrong. I think it's just,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes with business and it's something that's added to a positive pot. So yeah, don't take up a bit more space than you think that you need to. You don't need to have all of the answers either straight away.
Mm.
But you do need to stay curious. So build the right relationships, research like what's going on culturally, globally, not just in your city, not just where you live, not just in your little world, but in the other pockets of places where different things are happening. Because that makes for a better brand message, and also just, I guess, to understand the world a lot
Yeah.
better. Um, and I think trust your instincts. That's probably one of the biggest learnings. I think gut feelings really matter. If something feels off with a partner or a proposal, it usually is for some reason, and that doesn't mean that's the end of it. And now we need to, close the campaign and go back to the drawing board. It just means that there's probably a bit of research to be done on how we connect these messages together. Um, and then I think the next layer to the question is, as for, I think, do's and don'ts, I think
Mm.
do focus on people that you're working with, not just the brand name or the message. I think the best partnerships happen when there's a genuine rapport within your own team and a shared energy. So I mean that internally in inside Thursday, we all like have respect each other and have I think a really great rapport and creative rapport. Listen to everyone, and that goes for when you're partnering with the team as well. And be prepared to, just sit back, and even if you do have like, yes, share your opinion, listen to others. That's super important. Um, do get everything agreed in writing
Yes.
is one of the
Yeah.
main things. I think even if it feels like a casual arrangement, I think do
Write it down.
follow up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think do definitely follow up, do stay in touch. If anything, over communicate, because yeah, that stung me a couple of times in my career where I haven't followed up with something, or it's not in writing and I'm like, oh, I'm sure we agreed on this. So I think you learn through the process of that. Um, and then I would say, I think we touched on this before, but don't chase um, a shiny name for the sake of it. It's easy to get really distracted by, big logos and big offers and big money. But if it's not a value that fits, it's not going to be a value that fits. It's like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So if it doesn't speak to your audience, it's really not going to land. And I think in partnerships, that can then be the make or break of a brand, really. Like what you put out to the world is what your voice is. So make sure that you are partnering with people that connect with your values. Um, and I think one of the most important things is don't take rejection personally. I think timing is everything in this partnerships world or relationships world. I think sometimes what's a no today might be a perfect yes 6
Yeah.
months down the line. And sometimes also just take a no for what it is sometimes. Like I think if you think it's a really great partnership and there's a massive message to be had, it doesn't mean that somebody else does and that it works for them or their messaging. I think there's a lot of things that go on internally that you can't see with brands. So I think it's like what I said before, aligning values is one of the most important things. And rejection happens in every aspect of life, so don't take it too personally.
There's so many brilliant things that you just said there. Thank you so much for sharing them. There's a few that are just that really resonated. The first was, and I kind of made this up based on what you said around make sure everything's written down. I was
Yeah,
thinking there's like a hashtag kind of ambiguity is the death of partnerships.
yeah,
That's
no,
it.
it's so true.
Yeah.
It is so true, and I think
Yeah.
there's so many moving parts with partnerships because,
Mhm.
well, within Thursday anyway, we obviously partner globally with brands, some of them being culturally relevant brands that are like in Newcastle, or maybe they're in London, or that maybe they're in Southport, smaller brands. And then there's a big brands where they're global. So you really have to, be focused, and your team has to understand what conversations and different conversations they're having at what time. So to have that level of organization and just being able to follow up, I think means a lot to people in relationships as well. Like, if you've had a chat to them on LinkedIn, or you've had a coffee with them you know, at an event, make sure you don't just leave that hanging, like follow that up and make sure that you keep the conversation going.
Well, and links nicely to to another piece that you shared as well, which was, it might be first of all, don't take no's personally because that's just life. But
Yeah,
but it could well be a no now, and it could be a no in the next 6 months. But we've had people that have said yes after 2 or 3 years,
yeah,
and because you've nurtured or cultured that relationship, or as you say, it could be it wasn't the right time. Now it is the right time. They've had a chance to get to know you, and you get to know them. There's all sorts of reasons, but don't take, as you said, don't take a no as a dead never.
yeah, exactly. Because sometimes that's not the case. And
No.
also people move within brands. So, you know, those people might move up or they might move laterally or they might go to another brand. So it's just really great to keep, for want of a better phrase, like a little black book of like if like contacts and people that you know are really strong, you have a great relationship with them and just keep in touch.
Well, I find it just, it doesn't take any time at all just to drop people a casual note. So, at the right moment, say, hey, we just saw this, was thinking about you, or we just produced this, thought you might like it, or hey, how's it going? Just
Yeah,
anything. So just
yeah,
to check in.
exactly. Yeah, and it costs nothing. You know,
That's nothing.
time says everything as well. Like if you're willing to listen and give people time in a relationship job, I think people will always have time for you. Usually that works.
Well, yeah,
Um,
it shows that you care.
yeah, definitely.
We could carry on with this for quite a bit, but having created partnerships for a large chunk of your career, agency side and brand side, and on in theatre on the stage, what are your top tips when it comes to creating high performing teams and winning cultures?
Oh, what a great question.
Hmm.
Um, First of all, I think culture is everything.
Yes.
You can have the best strategy in the world, but if the people around you aren't like energized, empowered, if they're not enjoying the ride, it just really won't stick. I think we mentioned that a little bit before as well. But I think for me, high performing teams thrive when there's a mix of this accountability and creativity, but I think there needs to be both. I think people need to be accountable for be really clear about the role that they're doing and the job that they're doing, what the end result needs to be, and also have room for creativity. I don't know if that kind of like
Yeah, I agree.
gels together, but I do think that there
Yeah,
needs to be room to be a bit like, oh, like let's write on a wall and
sure.
just see what sticks, but also coming to something that is a little more based in, right, now I know what's stuck, these are my actions and this is now what I need to see through. Because I think if you have too much of either, it becomes a bit rigid in one aspect if there's too much process. And then if you just have a really wide creative thinker, then it just kind of becomes a bit sporadic and a bit spider leggy. So I think everyone needs to know what they're here to do, but they also need to feel safe to experiment and speak up and try something new. Um, so I always try and personally lead with a lot of transparency. So I'll share the vision, or we'll all work together on that. The challenges and what everyone needs to do, and then I'll check in through the process. But I think I'm a big believer in, and I think celebrating progress as well. Like it's not just about perfection.
Yes.
you know, I think you need to nothing's about just perfection. I think there is a progress. You need to be like, right, yeah, that was great. And you really saw that vision as well. And I think I always try to create an environment where people can bring their whole self to the table. So whether that be just like humor or vulnerability or maybe a few kooky weird ideas, because that's when the magic happens. I think like that's when like things work really well together.
I mean, I believe that everyone, I think, has got the power to be incredible. I think it just depends. It depends on the conditions in which that were put together around them.
Yeah,
But I think I think what, as you said at the start, that makes so much sense, which is perhaps some of the best best roles are the ones where there are, there's a certain element where the deliverables are clear, might be, they might be quantifiable or not necessarily quantifiable, just clear. And then the other element is for creativity. So,
Yeah.
but you need to have the balance.
Exactly. I think really like knowing that bit where I said like really knowing what your job is one of the
Yes.
most important things. I think I've been, and this just comes from experience of not knowing and not having potential like leadership that was able to give me structure in that way. Like they didn't really know themselves. So it was a little bit like, oh, well, you just like have a little look at what sticks. But then there
Yeah.
was no structure to anything. So I think people need to know their lane, if that means
Yeah.
that's a great thing to say. But I think
I think so.
they need to know what their role is and
I
then
think so.
activate that, but then also give them room for if they feel like they want to grow in a certain area or they want to be more creative or do more logistic bits, then they have the ability and the space to be able to try these things out as well. And you know what? I'll be really honest with you, Greg. I think in fast-paced brands and agencies, that's really something that's super hard to do because when you hire for a role, you need someone to just really do that job, and so growth can be quite difficult within a metric that's like we need you to do this and this is why we needed someone to do this.
Yeah.
But I think it's really, really important because then people feel stuck and lost and they can get really unsatisfied by what they're doing, and that's not what you want. You want when people are having fun, and that's when they thrive.
I think people just want to know what's expected of them,
Yeah,
that they're doing a good job, that they can fail or not do something or well or come for guidance, and they're supported and trusted. I think that
yeah.
those elements make for good roles and good teams, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think we also work with agencies that are I mean, there's an incredible agency that we work with consistently called They Say, and the way that they're built is they hire in like specialized people that work in that environment. So they're really highly proficient in that environment. So whether it be like paid media or influencer or live events, and they're a studio which hire in these people for each
Hmm.
project. So it kind of takes the agency model, it kind of disrupts it a little bit, and I found that a really like amazing way to work with their suppliers and partners because everyone knows what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they're really passionate about their role. It's not like one person trying to do everything, which I think you can find sometimes in other agencies.
It's a hard mix to get right. But we've
Yeah.
got one last question, if I may. So to round us off, one last question. What does the future hold for businesses when it comes to creating partnerships with each other? And what do you think, if anything, will you and Thursday be doing differently?
Oh, um,
Crystal ball.
that's a good question. I think the future partnerships is definitely heading towards depth and not just noise.
Yeah.
So audiences are really, really switched on. I think they can smell a forced collaboration a mile away. um, so I think we'll see more brands focusing on alignment, um, shared purpose, and storytelling that feels really authentic, hyper authentic, rather than overly perfected and polished.
Yes.
So a little bit something that's a bit more rough around the edges, but the message is just so
Yeah.
aligned. And I think at Thursday we'll be leaning even further into what makes us unique. So I think creating experiences that bring people together in real life, in ways that feel really, really bold and playful and meaningful. I think it's obviously something we already do and activate, but how do we really push that to the nth degree? So at the moment within Thursday, we're thinking more about long-term collaborations, not just one-off stunts, but how do we grow a partnership with a brand? Because I think
Mm.
that's been done really, really, really well in the fashion space, but it's harder to do in like the product space, where you work with a brand together consistently. Um, because it tends to be like a one-off fad and you make loads of sales from it, or everyone talks about it for a moment in time and then it's lost. But how does that grow and age like a good wine?
Yeah.
And I think we're also really exploring that intersection of dating and lifestyle. So food, travel, music, wellness, and what that opens up in terms of new types of partnerships. Um, because it's just such a huge space. Um, we don't want to just sell, like, well, this is why we changed our model, but we didn't want to just sell a dating app. We want to be really a part of how people live, how they meet, how they connect, how they celebrate, how they fall in love, but also potentially how they make friends, in the real world, not just online. And I think in a space where people are taking so much of their time out of the real world and into this virtual reality space, either through gaming or through their phones or through images that are not in front of them. I think it's super important to bring people back to the real world in some way, and remind them that they are here and they can experience it.
It's
Um,
really
yeah,
It's really interesting that sorry, as you just, as I was thinking it, you said it, which was we made the decision to be more than just an app. But just a few seconds before you said that, I was thinking that Thursday have basically brought dating back into the real world,
yeah,
but in a really fresh, modern, relevant way, because it was all dating was all digital, really,
yes,
the last 20
yeah.
odd. But you kind of said, "Hang on a minute," and you've mixed it, and you brought it back. I hadn't thought
Yeah,
about that before.
yeah, I think we've just like kind of flipped it
Yeah,
on its head,
it back in some
but
ways.
then brought it back. Yeah, but then brought something that was actually really
Working.
important. Yeah, really working and really important, psychologically, as we touched on before, but also culturally. Um, for people to understand that communication in real life is growth and is learning, and there's so many more signs that you get from somebody when you're standing in front of them talking to them than you do when it's just across an email or in a messenger or swiping. And that people shouldn't be something that's easily accessed, that there should be work, there should be something that you have to do to connect with someone. And I think Thursday just want to make people like stand up from their bedroom, stand up from their workplace, and just like get out and communicate again and have fun, like, and put their phones away. And yeah, don't get me wrong, we film all these events and we're very like, you know tapped into this, tech world. I mean, we still have an app where you buy the event tickets, but we're very much rooted in the real world and, in real life.
I was thinking there is a for your marketing team and for your agencies and for yourself, there is a brand idea, I think, in there around throw your phone away.
Yeah,
Obviously, the execution of that's quite will be you've got to be obviously careful, because obviously the phones are an element of, but I think there is a brand idea in that, or throw your brand away, throw your phone away.
yeah, definitely. I mean, we have had events where we've had stickers on our phones, like private events where we're like, just,
Mm,
let's not take pictures, let's just. And I think one of the main things is that people love to share. So when they're doing something
mm.
that's really, really fun, they want to share that with the world. They want to say, look at what we're doing, like, come and join us. I think you should be doing this, or we're part of something. So tech is super important because it links you in a unbelievable way to people that you would have never been linked to before. And in that way, it's brilliant. It really, really is. But I think there still needs to be this aspect of understanding that real connection is made in front of each other. And that's from everything from body language to, communication and words in person coming out differently, things being maybe a little bit awkward, or, you know, um, and
I,
I think that's what Thursday are trying to do, is just to kind of find the intersection between that.
I know,
Yeah.
I know we can spend a long time talking about this. I know we've got to wrap up, but actually,
Yeah.
think you might have put your finger on it, which is the potential execution of that brand idea of throw your phone away, is that the brand is somehow the instrument of your life with the deep with only the true deep connections ever being made in person, but the phone is actually the instrument which connects, amplifies, call it what you will, but actually the true connection and the true beauty is made through the face-to-face interaction, which you can
Exactly.
on the phone.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just exactly. I think it's just so important to understand that connection is not just on the phone. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. We've like, obviously, I think it's scary for people. It's really scary for people now after being in lockdown and
Yeah,
in situations where they phones were just like the way to connect with people, but
only
it
way.
isn't now. So get out there, have some fun, speak to people in real life.
Well, look, I wonder whether you'd come back and join us in a few months' time and let us know how things are going at Thursday, because I have loved this conversation, and
Definitely.
you've delivered an absolute thank you. You've delivered a masterclass on how to create global, world-leading first partnerships, and I truly mean that in terms of first partnerships, blending the digital with the in-person. But Emma-Louise Maw from Thursday, thank you so much for joining us on Game Set Matchup. And perhaps you can come back at some point and let us know how things are going, and because we would love to hear.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. It's been lovely to speak to you. Thank you. I'd love to come back. Take
Thank
this as a yes already.
well, date to follow. Take care. All the best.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need to knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.